That's a sampling of Music Without Borders, one of several programs that have redrawn Morristown's cultural map during the tenure of Anne Aronovitch at the Arts Council of the Morris area. Anne's leaving soon, but not until we find out the state of the arts in Morristown. Hi, this is Kevin Coughlin for MorristownGreen.com. Thanks for tuning in. MorristownGreen.com. On March 29th, Great Conversations returns to the Madison Hotel. It's a fundraiser for the Arts Council that lets you dine with a room full of movers and shakers. This will be the last such gathering for Anne Aronovitch, who is retiring as Executive Director of the Arts Council. For the next half hour, we'll have our own great conversation about art, why it matters, will it survive tough times, and the difference between artists and lawyers. Our guest today on MorristownGreen.com is Anne Aronovitch, the Executive Director of the Arts Council of the Morris area. And coming up later this month in March 29th, Anne will be part of Great Conversations. And we'll tell you some more about that, but I just figured that Anne will be retiring from her post here, so I thought it's time to have a great conversation with Anne. Welcome.
Thank you, Kevin. It's nice to be sitting down and chatting with you.
Now, I must say this is a little bittersweet because you came here in about 2008, I believe. It's about the same time we started Morristown Green, and I've had a chance to view up close your passion and dedication for the arts, and you will be missed.
Well, thank you. As I must say, as I grew in my position, it was nice to see MorristownGreen.com likewise grow to be really indispensable in the community.
Well, thanks. I was poking around to find some pithy comments about art, and I came up with these two. This one, art is individualism, and individualism is a disturbing and disintegrating force, and there lies its immense value. For what it seeks is to disturb monotony of type, slavery of custom, tyranny of habit, and the reduction of man to the level of a machine. So that's Oscar Wilde. Then there's this one. Art is making something out of nothing and selling it. Frank Zappa.
The first one especially is a pretty heavy quote, I would say. But you know, art really is very individual. And by art, you know, at the Arts Council, we always speak very, very broadly. So it's not just typically what we think of as art, visual arts, theater, the performing arts of theater, music and dance. But really, art is an expression of creativity in our lives, whether, you know, there's the art of cooking. You know, great chefs are artists in their own rights. More commercial expressions of it could be in graphic designers or even architects. But, you know, in some ways, I always think that we're all artists. There's some part of us that yearns to express creatively in whatever that may be. It might be, you know, for my daughter, it's often in how she dresses. She can put together the most bizarre combination of things, and yet it looks fabulous on her. So because there's that spark of creativity of what's going to go with what, and for her it's a sense of self-expression. So I think art, that's what art is about. It's about individual expression. Now, do I think it is, you know, destructive and whatever those other words were?
Disturbing and disintegrating force.
Well, you know, to the extent that, you know, sometimes it challenges the status quo, perhaps that's a sense of quote-unquote disturbing or disintegrating, but truly I think it's creativity over the ages that really has helped to define civilizations and really has helped to propel civilizations forward. I mean, when you think about some of the great civilizations in history, back to the Roman times, or, you know, what is it you really remember, other than perhaps historical figures? But, you know, it's the art and sculpture of the time. It's the literary writings. Maybe it's the architecture. And those are the things that really survive to today and help to define who we are as people, and certainly for past times, you know, who those civilizations were and what their values were. So I would disagree, I think, with Oscar Wilde. in terms of it being a disturbing and destructive force, but certainly a very individual force.
Where do you see the role of the Arts Council of the Morris area in all this?
I think the role of the Arts Council is to facilitate opportunities and venues for people to both participate in and experience the arts. We have a fabulous arts and education program where we work to bring arts programming into the schools. And that's reaching our young people at a time when, the arts are shown to have effects in developing creativity, correlated with increasing test scores and creating good citizens. But really it's about using your own creativity. And so at the Arts Council, that's what we're about. Our mission is to bring the arts to the center of community life. And we really do that through programs in the schools, through programming in the community, through working with our local artists and our arts organizations. You don't have to be an artist to enjoy art or to participate in art, because it all comes back to that sense of creativity. So the Arts Council's looking for ways, always creative ways to and programs to allow people to experience the arts, to allow people to participate in the arts. And you're familiar, for example, with our pumpkin illumination event, which is it's a great event, and it's really a very family oriented event. It's not just about other people making art for people to view.
For those who don't know, the pumpkin illumination at Halloween is when the public's invited to carve up their pumpkins and bring them to display them at the Vail Mansion by the reflecting pool.
And it's an activity. One of the great comments that we received after the first time we did that was it's all about celebrating families' creativity. Mm-hmm. So, do you think of carving pumpkins as art? Probably most people would say no, but in fact, it's very creative. When you look at all of the different carved pumpkins that were at that event, it was an incredible range, an incredible diversity of how people, expressed what they thought their pumpkin carving should look like. So that's all about engaging people in unusual ways and in unusual venues to be participants in art. Mm-hmm. So we're not just about traditional art forms. We really try to push the boundaries of what's art and how you experience the arts.
Looking over the Arts Council's website, it says that you've had a hand in more than 750 cultural events. Some of the marquee events, of course, are First Night Morris every year. You have exhibits at the Atrium Gallery and 14 Maple here in Morristown. You have scholarship programs at Morristown High School. Every year you have the Giralda Farms Music and Arts Festival. Art Around the Park coming up this month is a fun event. But you've been able to do all this at a very difficult economic time. Tell me what your budget is, how you've been able to carry on in these tough times, and how you hope the arts will be able to continue in the future.
Well, I have to say that the Arts Council, I think, as all arts organizations, and you could probably say all not-for-profits, in these tough economic times has had to be very creative. One of our goals when the economy turned down was you had to look inward. You had to say, are there programs that need to be cut? How can we reduce expenses? We tried to be very creative to keep as much of our programming and our services intact as possible. And we did that through very unique doing very unique things. One, and you're seeing this everywhere, I think, in the arts community especially, is collaboration. When groups come together and bring their different skill sets, you're really helping, allowing even more art to be present in the community, because you're maximizing each of your individual resources to create something else. So we've certainly we've always been involved in collaborations, but we have become involved in even more collaborations. And we've found that you can do things on a grassroots level that don't necessarily cost a lot of money, but that really bring people together in an arts-related environment, and that's what we're all about: bringing people together.
What would be some examples of that kind of collaboration?
Well, one of the things we do, this will be the third summer in a row that we're doing it. We're collaborating with the Mayo Center for the Performing Arts in a wonderful series of 4 outdoor concerts on the green in Morristown at lunchtime. And these are concerts of world music, sung in different languages. Sometimes we've had a dance component to it. Last summer we had Indian music, and there were Indian dancers there at the same time. And these are free concerts.
Music Without Borders?
Music Without Borders. I neglected to say that. Music Without Borders, free concerts for the public to enjoy.
So you're pooling resources with the Mayo Performing Arts Center on that?
We are absolutely collaborating with them. Last summer we also collaborated with the Morris County Parks Commission in offering, it was very interesting. It was a day called Beatlemania, Beetle Mania, that from the Arboretum standpoint focused on the science aspect of beetles, your garden-type beetles, and yet at the same time, at the end of the day, we had a concert of Beatles music, which was really a lot of fun and it was a family-oriented day. So again, it was a collaboration with a non-arts group to bring something that had a science component as well as an arts component together. The families really, really enjoyed. It was on a very hot day in July last year, but it was a really wonderful day. So another example of collaborations. We have for many years collaborated with the New Jersey Shakespeare Theater, or Shakespeare Theater of New Jersey, I should say, in putting on our annual 2-day Arts and Education Showcase, where we bring in some of our fabulous teaching artists, actually from all over the country, who offer arts programmings for the schools. And over the course of 2 days, we are able to showcase up to 30 artists, or teaching artists or teaching artist groups, who essentially give the attendees the flavor of what it is they have to offer for the students and the educational value of that.
You're listening to MorristownGreen.com. Our guest is Ann Aronovitch of the Arts Council of the Morris area. In our next segment, Ann talks about the difference between artists and lawyers. I know that you're funded from the State Council of the Arts, and also you get some major funding from the freeholders. How have the freeholders been in terms of supporting arts here?
I think it's a tough time all over Morris County, and I think the freeholders are trying to do the best that they can with the limited budgets that they're working with. And so I think they've tried to continue to support the arts. We've seen our funding from the freeholders cut, but I think that that's not a unique experience. And I think that the freeholders are balancing the social services that they are responsible for the citizens of Morris County with some of the more intangible ways that we reach the citizenry through the arts. So, I would say individually they're very supportive. We'd always love to see more funding from public sources and private sources, but in this day and age, I think we're grateful for continuing funding from the county.
Has your overall budget held steady, or are you fighting declines like everybody else is?
Our budget has decreased over the past, when the economy first started to turn down. We definitely did some looking at our budget and cutting and trimming wherever we could, trying to be very fiscally responsible. And that continued for the next couple of years, just really looking at where the dollars are going to and making sure that we were being as responsible as we could. So our budget has probably shrunk the first couple of years into the economy. I think slowly we're beginning to feel that there's a little bit more funding available for the arts. Of course, it's never enough. We'd love to see much, much more. But I think unfortunately one of the things that happens in the arts is, when in these tough economic times, when you're looking at putting food on people's tables and putting roofs over people's heads, people look at the arts and they say, well, when you balance them, why are we supporting the arts? But the arts have such intrinsic value that you can say you can feed people food, you can feed people's souls. And that's what arts really do. They feed people's souls in a way that even in tough economic times, when you've got those creative outlets, the spirit, you're really working with the spirit in ways that, money can't really do. No amount of money can do. And so the arts, even more so, I think, in tough economic times, have this intrinsic value that I just wish we could convey that more to the general public. But I think that we've been very fortunate to have a very loyal support base of institutional funders and individual donors, and we've been very grateful for that.
How much have you been able to raise altogether?
It's kind of a difficult question because, we have some funding year by year, some funding overlaps fiscal years. But, I would say that a good 30% of our budget comes from individuals, including some of our 30 to 40%, including our fundraising activities. And the balance from a combination of the public sector, corporations, and foundations. So we've been fortunate to have a diverse.
What is the total budget?
Our total budget is in the 700,000s. So that's down a little bit from, let's say, 2-3 years ago.
Have you found, as corporate giving become more difficult over these last few years?
I think it's become more difficult for the arts because we find a number of corporations, I won't say many, but really a number of corporations who've done some inward looking themselves and have refocused their philanthropic giving into areas other than arts. And the two big areas really are social services related activities or organizations and the environment. So those are that's where we found corporations redirecting money that used to support the arts now into other areas.
We've seen at the state level the last couple of years sort of a political tug of war. That's something new to the Arts Council at that level. The Lieutenant Governor has been sort of at odds over control of the state Arts Council. Has any of that trickled down to this level? Has it affected the county organizations in any kind of a way?
You know what? I don't think so. I think the Lieutenant Governor has probably done what she felt was best. We do have a very strong state council in the arts, and I think that particular interaction and controversy hasn't really filtered down to the local level. Of course, the county arts agencies, and every county has an arts agency that receives funding from the State Council on the Arts, and part of that is to re-grant money to local, smaller, more less regional organizations. But so I think that what really impacts us more than anything else is the budget, the amount that's in the line item for funding arts organizations. And as I say, we have a very strong State Council on the Arts who's really feels the importance of the arts on a local level and is very, very supportive of these programs.
Last year there was actually a slight increase, wasn't there, from the state?
There was an increase, yes, and we were all celebrating that. We're hoping that that's a trend for the future.
So I want to circle back now to how you came to the arts. Your story is quite interesting on a personal level. You were a partner in a very well-known law firm here, and so you traded a partnership in a law firm for running an arts council. How did that come about?
Well, they weren't actually directly related, but I had practiced law. I'd been in the private practice of law for 23 years and really loved what I did. But it just came to a time where I felt like I was ready for a different experience, and so I left the practice of law, not really knowing what that experience was, or even having a faint idea of what it would be. And I was very busy relaxing when, after I guess it was 5 months later, the Arts Council was looking for an interim director to serve while they did a search for a permanent director. My predecessor had moved on. And I had been on the board of the Arts Council for 12 years while I was practicing law. And so I thought, well, I'm not doing anything else at the moment, and I know the organization well, so let me help out and let me fill in as executive director. And, as they say, the rest is history. I absolutely fell in love with what I was doing. Knowing the organization as a board member was so different from knowing it as a staff person, when you really are working with people on a very, very personal and intimate level. And I just, the way that our programs and our services affect people. One of the very first things that happened was I had the privilege of calling the winner of one of our scholarships to let the young woman know that she had won that year's scholarship. And I got to the mother instead, and the mother was just, she was in tears. She was just so jubilant. She said her daughter had really been questioning, did she have talent? Is this the direction she should be going? And it made such a difference in that young woman's life. And she subsequently went on to study the visual arts. But, those kinds of conversations and that kind of feedback and interaction is just, in some ways, it's addictive in a good way. So I fell in love with what we were doing, and here I am 4 years later.
Compare and contrast for me the world of law and the world of the arts. How are artists and lawyers? Are there any similarities? How do they differ?
It's an interesting question because, I've always been an artist from a very young age. So it wasn't like I was a lawyer interested in the arts. From the age of 7, I began to study the piano and studied keyboard all the way through college. So I've always been involved.
Why did you choose law over music?
I felt that I was, I'm sure everybody can say this, I thought I was talented, but unfortunately, I didn't think that it was enough talent to really become a professional pianist. So I continued to play on an informal level. And
classical or?
Classical. My training is definitely classical.
Who do you enjoy playing?
You know what? I love playing new agey music. But I don't actually have that much time to play these days. But in my younger years, I accompanied choral groups and actually began to sing in choral groups. And
you sing in one now?
I don't sing in one now, but I used to. Unfortunately, this is one of the things that we all have to remember. When you get busy in your life with what you think your career track is, you have to always remember that there are things outside of that. I didn't do a good job of remembering that, and so that's one of the reasons I'm so thrilled to be at the Arts Council, where every day is about the arts, and every day is about, expressing creativity, encouraging others to do that. That kind of work is very distinct from practicing law. Although, interestingly, probably the thing I loved most about practicing law was, working with my clients and building relationships with my clients. And so that's the common theme. Now in working with the Arts Council, those relationships with people is what's really impactful and is where I find the most gratification in terms of what we do.
Is there an artistry in the practice of law?
Yeah, there's a creativity. There's absolutely a creativity when you're working with a set of facts that people think might be black and white. Nothing is ever black and white, as I early on learned. There are always different perspectives and different ways to be looking at something.
Not too much poetry in legal briefs, though.
Not too much poetry, but, there is an art to writing legal briefs. And frankly, when I first came to the Arts Council and I had to write a few of our major grant applications, I said to my colleagues, it's like writing a brief, because you're stating the facts and then you're using the facts, interweaving the facts into making an argument for why you deserve to be supported. And, legal briefs are really no different. So that's definitely a skill that carried over from the legal world.
In terms of the personalities of artists versus the personalities of lawyers, how do you compare?
I tell you, it's quirky on both sides. It's creative on both sides. I think that it's really individual personalities that are expressing, regardless of what the profession happens to be. I had great colleagues practicing law, and of course we work with great artists here at the Arts Council.
Of course, you have an artist in the family now, right? Is your daughter?
My daughter, yes, my daughter is a budding photographer. She went to the Rhode Island School of Design to study photography. Unfortunately, like many young people, she's struggling to figure out how to use her art background to make enough money to pay her rent.
Did she ever express interest in law as a career?
No. One time very early on, she was an intern in my law office for a summer, and I think that convinced her she never wanted to work in an office. And, I give her a lot of credit. Her sense of working in a creative environment was not an office, and that's just not a law office, but an office of any type.
This is MorristownGreen.com. In our final segment, Anne Aronovitch gives us a preview of Great Conversations, a star-studded benefit for the Arts Council of the Morris area. So now, of all the interesting programs you've been associated with here as director, which ones stand out as favorite ones?
Oh, God, that's really so hard. Because really everything we do has intrinsic value. And, if I chose one, it just would be very hard to choose one. If I chose one, I'd then have to say, but wait a minute, there are, 10 or 15 other programs.
Maybe favorite's the wrong word. Maybe 2 or 3 that just stand out for whatever reason. Maybe something didn't go as planned, or maybe something surprised you in a way you didn't expect it to.
I would say, one of our very impactful programs is our Young Artist Mentoring Program at Morristown High School. That's in large part funded by the Lauren Faya Foundation. And it works with a group of young high school students every year who may not have advantages that other talented young artists have. And we pair them with 2 professional artists to help them to develop their portfolio of artwork, to help position them to be competitive in applying to art school and seeking scholarships, or even if that's not the course that they want to go, to help them have a foundation for looking for jobs in a creative sector.
That is a great program. Lauren Fela was a very special young lady, and she left us way too soon.
She did, and her family. Our family has really given a lot back to the community by setting up the foundation they have, and by choosing to help fund our Young Artist Mentoring Program, because it literally changes lives. It really helps to change lives. I think work that we do in the school with our young people helps to really make an impact. It's not just about bringing one assembly of art in. We have programs that work with groups of students for up to 2 weeks in a residency program in some way that's interdisciplinary, using the arts as a vehicle for learning about math, geography, science, communication skills. All of those things. When people think of using the arts in school, they're thinking of maybe kids painting or kids, reenacting or staging a play. But really, when we bring the arts into the schools and residencies, we're using them as a vehicle for learning on a bigger scale. It may be about creating puppets, but making papier-mâché puppets, as with our teaching artist spiritry. But really, those puppets are about choosing people. Those puppets are used, and this is a particular program where they chose people throughout history, famous people throughout history, to sit down at a dinner table and have a conversation together. So it wasn't just creating the papier-mâché people. It was about researching the people. What was the time that they lived in? What was the culture like at that time? And, what would Martin Luther King be saying to, Mother Teresa? Even though they would never have necessarily had a conversation together. But if they did, what would they be saying to one another? And on the dinner table, what kind of food would they be eating? And then these young people would write a script for the conversation. So they're practicing, writing skills and communication skills. And all underlying all of that is always a sense of teamwork, of bringing a group of young students together to work on an arts project that's really just the backdrop for other global learning. So the arts in our schools are really, an amazing tool that the schools have for educating young people, educating a different part of the young people's brains, the brain of young people. It's hard to pick just one program.
You mentioned conversations, so let's talk about Great Conversations coming up. How did that come about? And tell us a little bit about who will be speaking and what this program's all about.
Well, Great Conversations actually started 4 years ago, and it was a fabulous concept to bring notable. In this case, we have up to 30 notable people in our community. Bring them into a fundraiser that's very unique, that gives the attendees the opportunity to have an intimate conversation with any one of these notable people. And so this year we have people, and we try to always have a diverse group of conversationalists. We call them our great conversationalists. And this year we've got people from business, such as Jeff Bellotti from Wyndham Exchange and Rentals. We've got Linda Bowden, who's the regional president at PNC Bank, Northern New Jersey. So we've got business folks. We've got not-for-profit folks like John Schreiber, who's the new president and CEO at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. We're very pleased to have Jacques Lacombe, who's the music director of the New Jersey Symphony Orchestra, joining us. And even Dr. Ann Matlack, who is the artistic director of our Harmonium Choral Society that's based in Morris County.
She gave 2 great concerts over the weekend.
She did, and you did a great job of doing a write-up on those. But we also have folks from the sports world. We have Ed Camp, who's the National Football League headlinesman, and we've got local business person, Stephen Aludo from NK Architects right in Morristown. We have, for those TV viewers who love The Sopranos, we have Al Sapienza.
You're really covering a lot of ground there.
We try to cover a lot of ground.
Football, Sopranos, Harmonium.
We try to have something for everybody. We've got Amy Ellis Nutt from the Star Ledger, who's a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist.
I know her well. She'll be great.
She'll be great. We have Paul Boudreau, who's the president and CEO of or president, I should say, of the Morris County Chamber of Commerce. So we really try to have something for everyone. And, I don't want to forget to mention Barbara and John Wilkerson are going to be joining us. They are art collectors of American folk art and indigenous Australian art, and also the U.S. chairman of the Global Poverty Project. So, it's really a diverse group of people. And so when you register to attend Great Conversations, we always ask our attendees for a list of their top 5 choices of who they'd like to sit with over a dinner table. And in the end, they get to always sit with somebody that's in their top 5 list.
And is there an opportunity to mingle earlier in the evening?
There is. We have an open cocktail hour for about an hour and a half where our conversationalists are all there.
What's the date?
The date is March 29th at the Madison Hotel. The reception starts at 6. The dinner's at 7:30, but during that reception period, all of the conversationalists are there. So if you wanted to speak with Paul Boudreau, and actually Ann Matlack was second on your list, and you're sitting with Ann Matlack, Paul will be there, and you can get to have a conversation with Paul. So that's the beauty of it. In this day and age of texting and emailing, what we really were feeling is that face-to-face conversation was lost. And this really is about the art of conversation, another form of art. So this is about coming together to have a conversation with just an interesting and an intriguing person. And all of our conversationalists are exciting. All of them are accomplished in their own right and in their own areas. And so that diversity that we bring together really, I think, allows, you can, in the room, in the night of the fundraiser, and this is a fundraiser for us, you can feel the electricity in the air. Where many fundraisers, maybe people can't wait to head out the door, when we were trying to bring our evening to a close, we find people still sitting at the table, not ready to stop having that conversation, not ready to stop their interaction, and or even if they get up, they're still talking as they're walking out the door. That's what we love about it. We get such great feedback, and this, as I say, this will be the fourth year that we're doing it. No repetition of conversationalists. They're all new for this year, and you can find a list of conversationalists as well as more about great conversations on our website at www.morrisarts.org.
And so, just for you, tell me why you're stepping down and what you and your husband Dick plan for the future.
Well, I would have to say, first of all, my husband's not retiring. He's not ready to retire. But, as when I left the practice of law, there are times in my life that I've just felt timing is right to do something different. And so, while I hate the word retirement because it conjures up images in my mind of sitting around doing nothing, I intend to be very active, not in terms of another job, but just in being able to pursue all of those things that I've always wanted to do. And so I really felt that the time was right. I'd been feeling more and more that I wanted to have that opportunity to have other experiences. And at the same time, I think that it's a good time for the Arts Council, because in my 4 years here, the organization, despite the economy, has never been stronger. Of course, we could always use more money, but it's never been stronger. It's got an amazing staff. I have a very, very strong board. We're currently this year in the process of completing a new 5-year strategic plan to set the Arts Council on the course for the next 5 years. So taking all of that together, it just seemed like the right time to hand the organization over to a new executive director to see it through the next 5 years. And I'm sure whoever that is will have that amazing, exciting experience that I have had for the past 4 years. I've been very grateful to be here. And as you never know where life will take you, and I was so pleased to find myself at the Arts Council.
Think you'll wind up back on the piano more now?
That's certainly on the little list in the back of my head. I'd love to travel more, have the opportunity to take courses at the universities, go into New York and enjoy some of that cultural richness, spend more time with my mother, who's 90, lives about an hour away, or even my daughter. Just even to sit down and spend an entire day reading a good book, if that's what I feel like doing. So I think the freedom to sort of make my life what I'd like it to be is really what I'm looking forward to. Although bittersweet, because I have really loved being at the Arts Council. As I said, it's been an amazing experience with amazing people. So that's not something that I leave lightly, but I just feel in my gut, in my heart, it's time to move on, and it's a good time to turn the organization over to someone else.
Any advice for your successor?
I think have fun. We can all get caught up in how much there is to do, but you have to remember you're here to be an agent of creativity, and that means that you have to be creative. You have to nurture your own creativity also while you're here. I think we don't remember that enough. So I think that's I think that's an important piece of advice that I'd give.
Our guest has been Ann Aronovitch, the Executive Director of the Arts Council of the Morris area. Ann, thank you so much for being with us, and all the best to you.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for this opportunity to chat.
And thank you for listening. Our musical montage featured the Swarvina School of Music, the Fula Flute Trio, and Shalgia. Our theme music was by Zazu Zaz. To wish Anne bon voyage, we'll close with the Warren Conroy Duo from Music Without Borders. For MorristownGreen.com, this is Kevin Coughlin saying, listen up, Morristown.
Excellent. Great job, man.